Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Sara Van Horne. Today we'll be talking about Africa, how Western media portrays it and how American people perceive it. Joining me today is CSUN professor David Blumenkrantz, who has photographed and written about Africa extensively. Also joining us is CSUN student Biniyam Fissehaye, who left Ethiopia to study political science here in the States. Okay, so my first question would be, in general, would you say America's media portrayal of African culture is accurate? It's open to both of you.
Well, it's a very general question because it's portrayed in media in different ways, in different forms of media, but generally speaking, accurate, I'd say it's not necessarily inaccurate, but it's very limited. You know, what they show might be something, we always talk about how they show the negative stuff. That's the stuff that gets on the news and all that, so we see a lot of that. And it might be out of context because the reports are so short or shallow. It doesn't mean it's all inaccurate, but I think that the complaint that a lot of people have about the media and the way Africa is represented in the media is that it's a very limited and prejudicial perhaps towards the negative, but mostly a very limited view. We don't hear about so many amazing, beautiful things that are going on in Africa.
And I agree in there, and he said, but my problem is just that a lot of times when you hear about Africa, it's just this one country. Like, that's just how it's represented, compared to if you hear about maybe Europe or Asia, it would be more specific into countries or regions. But Africa is just this vague thing, so it's kind of like people have the wrong perception about if there's a war, they feel like the whole Africa is a war. If there is, you know, poverty is the whole Africa. So in terms of that, I have a problem in terms of, you know, it's not that much of information, I would say, compared to other places of the world about Africa. It's just too vague to me. That's my problem with it.
Yeah, so would you say the United States media does play a crucial role in the way Americans perceive African?
Yeah, I mean, just even my own experience coming to America, a lot of my peers doesn't have that much knowledge of Africa. If they do, it's like common things between forest, famine, war, and that's about it. And nobody really knows the different countries, or that everybody felt like everybody's speaking, you know, cliques, you know.
I think if you're going to ask mainly about Americans' perception of Africa, yeah, I think Americans there is this knock against Americans for being sort of ignorant when it comes to geography. So Africa would be the most extreme example of that, where I think a lot of people, when I came back from living in East Africa for years, people that knew I was there for all this time, they said, how was Nigeria or how was South Africa? I had never been to those countries. They just sort of lump it all together into one sort of, you know, one sort of as a country instead of a continent, which is very diverse.
Okay, now a lot of the times editors tend to use photographs of displaced people and malnourished children. That's usually what you see on the covers. Why is this? Why aren't they choosing pictures of, you know, people that are happy, and why are they just wanting these negative, so to speak, photographs?
You mean like on national magazines, things like that? Well, I think they're reporting events that may be happening. As I said at the beginning, I think that some of those things are happening, but we don't get the American public, the readers of the media, the consumers of the media, may not get the whole context of what led up to this situation happening, and so they just get the sort of superficial image, which can be very dramatic and emotional or heart-rendering or, you know, elicit sympathy or whatever emotion that it might elicit. But again, I don't think that they're giving the full story. And there's an old saying in the media, if it bleeds, it leads. So it's just the most dramatic situations kind of thing. But, you know, under what context would Time magazine, for example, run a picture of some very upper middle class Africans, unless they're doing a story on some sort of African Renaissance that's occurring, which actually is, and a lot of African academics and intellectuals are writing and talking about this African Renaissance that's going on, but it's not something that's considered to be newsworthy in the West, unfortunately.
And the other problem I have with the studies was infomercials. that I do support if there is a genocide, if there is a famine, it should be reported. I'm not the type of African who say, oh, let's hide it because there's a problem, everybody needs to know about it. But then I have a problem when we show an infomercial that is 20 years old every morning. So I don't know what type of image that would create in an average American or anybody, you know, just seeing the old picture over and over again.
Would you say there's this sort of need for Americans to see this destruction going on? I mean, the point of the media is to really sell, to make profit, so therefore they're putting these pictures, you know, of these people.
Well, my thing is, like, sometimes I think for whether it's America or anybody else, anywhere else in the world, people should know about if there's a problem. I do believe in that. But sometimes there are, let's say, recent issues. Let's say, for example, I would just put Darfur or the DRC. And you have thousands of people that are dying. You don't hear about something recent, something that we need to, like, kind of like go stop or like deal with. But then we hear about, you know, things that are past 10 years ago, or things that are not maybe as relevant. You know what I'm saying? So there's kind of like imbalance. Sometimes we want to see more problems because there are problems, and sometimes we don't because it's like there is no. It's like there's a lack of balance in terms of Africa.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point. For example, you take the case of Darfur. Some of the photographs that you will see of mine, maybe you'll show something from South Sudan. I was there like 20 years ago or so, and there were civil strife and displaced peoples going on even then. But you know, it's one thing to talk about the way the media depicts Africa by showing all these negative images, but then on the other hand, Darfur is going on a daily basis, and we don't really get any information unless you have to actively seek it out. If you want to actively seek out that information, especially with the internet, you can find out what's going on in any corner of the world, basically. But the media is not really there on a daily basis reporting day-to-day developments in Darfur, let alone even Afghanistan, for that matter. So I think it's just a matter of giving people a little bit of sensational news here and there, and just if anything, what they consider to be extremely major happens, as a major development or break in the war or something, like that, or George Clooney goes over there or something, then you'll hear about it. But otherwise, it's just kind of, it's going on right now. DRC. Yeah,
and then like you say, you brought Clooney and a lot of actors and stuff. And the issue I have sometimes is that nowadays, even if we talk about the problems, it's something that's cool. Like, you know, it's not like more like urgent, like let's do something about it. I'm not saying like Clooney does that, but the way it's promoted nowadays for especially young people is like, just to know about it is cool. Like, we sound smart talking about it, but it's not the information. Is more like it's not access for you to go out and help out, or more information why things happen and who are the major actors involved in it and what's the atrocity. But it's like kind of vague, you know, when the information come out.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to what you had mentioned earlier about these pictures in the media and people seeing these images but not really knowing the story behind them. And take, for example, these pictures you took while staying in Sudan. Let's take a look at those now. Clearly, these two pictures, you know, give off very different meanings. Can you tell us a little the story behind the two?
Well, this was probably about 1989, I believe, in a town called Juba, which was basically the capital city of southern Sudan. And we don't really have time to go into the whole history of why there's a southern and northern Sudan, but there are, and they've been at odds for religious and all kinds of financial reasons, minerals, oil, things like that. Anyway, when I was there, I was working with some relief agencies, and the UN was there giving food relief and medical relief and that kind of thing. And the little NGO I was working for was there with them. So we walked around, and this was on the shop fronts. There were a lot of displaced people because, you know, that's what happens in war. And there was a little colony of lepers hanging out on this porch of this shop. And I think what's interesting about these two photographs is that in one of the photographs, the first photograph on the left, the woman looks very suspicious and almost hostile and very guarded, and the second photograph, she's smiling. And it just happened that after I took the first photograph, I smiled, and then she smiled back, and we made a sort of a little human connection just very briefly, and I moved on.